What do Falcons do? We rise up. Welcome to Rise Up Reactions, the show where we talk all things Falcons, NFL, Georgia sports, and in general the sports news of the day. I'm your host, Dr. Lee Denning, the Golden Hard Doc and a lifelong sports fan, coming back to you today talking about some moves that I think the Falcons can make to potentially save some salary and potentially make a little bit of room should we decide to pursue Hassan Reddick as a trade and then potentially take on his contract. Right now, we would not have the cap space available to do that, but there are some moves that we can make in order to get to that point. I did want to talk about this real quick because I'm not going to have as much content coming out next week as I will be in enemy territory in New Orleans for a conference. But otherwise, just wanted to talk about this real quick with some guys that I think we could cut reasonably at this point. A, in their careers, and B, given what they're worth on the market, what we paid them, what we're looking to try and do for the future. But there are 8 guys on this list that I think immediately can go, and then there's a bunch of guys that are like, $950,000 plus who could also go and basically free up, $1 million a person there to try and make some room. So let's start with the most obvious one in the room, and that is Taylor Heinicke. Right now, we would owe him, if he plays this entire season as our backup, we owe him like almost $9 million. Unfortunately, we did let a roster bonus hit earlier in free agency where it basically gave him another $1 million. So we basically said, we're willing to burn $1 million to ensure that we have a backup quarterback to back up Kirk Cousins. God forbid he is not ready to go by the start of the season or he gets hurt again. There's a lot of talk that with one of the third-round picks, one of the day 2 picks, or should we trade back and pick up some additional day 2 or day 1 picks, that we might be looking to take a quarterback to compete in the room there. And I think we could certainly look at getting one of these guys out of like the UFL who performs really well, or something like that as the season progresses to potentially be a backup as well on the cheap. But I think releasing Taylor Heinicke makes the most sense right out the gate. By releasing him at this point, we save $5.74 million. And that just makes sense to me. I believe that's before the June 1st designation. So we need to make a decision one way or another before June 1st. But I believe releasing him makes the most sense. He is the easiest place to save cap at this point in time with the minimal hit overall. There's still going to be a cap hit, but it would be very minimal. The next one might be a little bit premature, but we are paying him a fairly decent amount of money so far. And for me, that's Lorenzo Carter. He's a guy who's been decent for us, but he hasn't been just phenomenal. He's been that 4 or 5 sack per year guy, but we really need to get something better than that, and he's getting a little bit longer in the tooth. He's going to be 30 by the time the season starts. Right now, he is worth about $4.75 million on the roster. If we keep him, if we cut him, we save $3.75. So we got to make some money somewhere if we're going to make some moves. I think he's a casualty. The next guy that I think we can reasonably get rid of, because I did not like him, I thought D. Alford played this role significantly better than he did, both in special teams and as a nickel/slot corner. I think D. Alford was significantly better than Mike Hughes, as the Falcaholics call him, the UCF legend Mike Hughes. By cutting him, we could save almost $3.1 million. By keeping him, we end up owing $3.845 million. It's only a $750,000 cap hit there. I didn't think he performed well last year. I hated seeing him on the outside. I absolutely think that Clark Phillips III needs to be our corner 2 on the outside unless we draft a guy in the first couple of days for the draft. Again, we found Clark Phillips in day 3, so he's been an amazing find so far, and I am a Clark Phillips believer and think that he could be the answer to corner 2 for us. That's my thought, with D. Alford playing more of a nickel and slot corner. So I like that pick, and I think you should get rid of Mike Hughes at this point. I think he was a bust with the Minnesota Vikings. He's been a bust with the Falcons so far. The next one is a guy going into year 3, and that's Ade Ogundeji. Ogundeji just really hasn't had much of a role on the team. He has not been the sack producer that we wanted as an outside linebacker. He really kind of fell out of favor last year because of the 4-3 scheme that we ran. We had Dean Pease running a 3-4. He was drafted to be in the Dean Pease scheme. We're going back to that scheme. with Lake here coming back, but I don't know that he makes sense. I think we've got other guys there. We've got Ebiketie, we've got Zach Harrison. Depending on what we do with Lorenzo Carter, we might have Lorenzo Carter, and we're looking to draft an edge rusher in this coming draft, most likely with the first pick in the draft for the team. I just don't think it makes sense to keep him. I think you know what kind of player you've got after a couple of years, and he just hasn't been up to muster so far. So I think he's a solid depth piece, but for $3.1 million in savings, I think we can move on. I don't think it's worthwhile to keep him at this point. The next guy that I'm going to talk about may be a little bit of a wild card, and I'm okay with keeping him. I'm okay with cutting him. He was completely out of the mix last year with an injury that sidelined him the entire season. But with the new NFL rules, we're going to need a solid return guy. And Avery Williams was set to be that guy for us, but was really ineffective last year because he was on IR for the entire season. So it depends on, A, is he still the guy that we want him to be for that special teams, especially with it looking like it's going to be a little bit more important on kickoff returns? If that's the role that he plays, yeah, let's keep him. We can save $1 million by cutting him, but let's keep him overall. If we think that he has any potential at all of being a solid returner. But if we don't think that, I'm okay with drafting another running back in the later days to be potentially that guy, or a wide receiver to fill that role. We still will need somebody in the room to back up both Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson. God forbid they get hurt. I think Carlos Washington, who played really well in the preseason last year, but nobody ever got hurt to really give him a shot on the depth chart last year, so we really didn't need his services behind three fairly solid backs. I think he makes an advance onto the active roster. I think Carlos Washington will beat him out in the preseason. Liked what I saw from him in preseason in 3 games last year. And I think he's a solid piece. I just think he really was hidden in the depth chart last year. Then the other 3 guys, these are all guys that have either been practice squad players or really didn't have a role for us. Tommy Togai, whatever. He's a defensive tackle that I didn't even know existed on our team. He's $1 million right there that we could cut. John Fitzpatrick, as much as it hurts me to say this about a Georgia guy, we just got a blocking tight end in Charlie Warner. So it doesn't make sense that we're going to have Kyle Pitts, Charlie Warner, potentially some of these other guys on the roster. We could draft a day 3 guy to come in and potentially learn behind some of the 2 veterans. I don't think we're going to be running as many heavy tight end sets as we did with with Arthur Smith. So I don't think it makes a lot of sense to keep John Fitzpatrick. I do believe he's going to be a casualty of this new regime. So we'd save about $950, almost $1 million by cutting him. The last guy that I think we could really easily cut because it's a depth move that I just don't think we need. Outside linebacker, Damone Harris. Again, a guy that's been sitting on our practice squad, but he's set to make $1 million on our practice squad. I don't think he's worth it. He's not a guy that I would anticipate seeing even significant playing time on a special teams perspective. So I think we move on from him. And with all of that said, the total savings that we can get just from those 8 moves alone is almost $20 million, $19,747,996. So I think that those make sense. It frees up for effective cap space about $10 million. There are a bunch of guys in the same mix as those last 3 that we could cut to get an additional $5 to $10 million and then just worry about filling those roles in the draft or with practice squad guys. So I don't think it makes a lot of sense to keep the ones that I mentioned, the biggest one being Taylor Heineke. I'm surprised that we kept him this long. It does make some sense that, hey, you want some security going into the draft. So if it doesn't fall your way with like a Milton or Rattler or, hey, maybe we take a day 2 swing on Bo Nix if he's still there. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to keep these guys. That's just my thoughts. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Are there any other obvious cuts that we can make here? There's another one that I do think we can't make until we get a safety that is proven, and that is another UCF legend in Richie Grant. I am firmly of the mindset that he is not going to get another contract with this team. This is his last year under contract. He has been an abject failure as far as I'm concerned from a safety position. He is below average for the league as far as I'm concerned in what he does. He was the direct reason, along with Ritter, but the direct reason on defense for several losses last year, where Ritter was the direct cause on offense. He was that guy on defense. He's going to be a $4 million guy this coming year, and if we cut him, we could save basically $3.2 million on it. I would love to see us do that and move on, but I don't know if they're ready to say Helms is the guy there. I think DeMarco Helms is significantly better from the limited sample size than Richie Grant, but that's just my thoughts. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Thank you for watching, liking, sharing, and subscribing, and as always, rise up.